When I was 18 years old, I visited China. My parents were living in China, in Beijing at the time. And my mother had asked me, I was like as a freshman in college at Harvard. And my mother asked me, would I like to join her and meet the Star group, which was a avant-garde art group. And I said, sure. So then one morning we got in a cab and we went to this location and we waited for about 45 minutes and no one showed up. And it was sort of like, I said to my mom, we're being stood up here, like what's going on? So after about 45 minutes, she and I said, I don't think anyone's coming here. I don't think this is gonna happen. So we said to the driver, could you take us back to the Beijing hotel? And just as we were about to leave, somebody came running up to the window and gave a little note. And the note said, please come join us at such and such an address. So we went to this address, and then there were like 30 people waiting for us. So as a young 18-year-old American coming to China, that was impressionable. Why were these artists so afraid to, were the police following us? Who was watching us? Are they being suppressed? And in fact, that was the case. These were artists who had to be super careful, not get in trouble with the police, to express themselves. And that really endeared. I became friends with them all, and they needed help. So in fact, my mother, who was an art historian at the time, lecturing, living in China between Beijing and Hong Kong, with my father, who was there trying to teach the Chinese government about all types of, the legal system and tax, and so people could do business with China and there could be interaction. I went back and realized I had all these interesting friends who were artists who needed help. They needed friendship. And I knew that my childhood friends, the Matisse family, his grandfather, Pierre Matisse, was the leading dealer in New York for contemporary art and modern art. And in fact, one of his artists was Zhao Wuji, who was an abstract expressionist, who was very talented, was based in France. And if he represented Zhao Wuji, I think he would probably want to know about the other Chinese artists that were very talented. So I went to him with chutzpah, saying, Pierre, would you be interested in representing these 10 artists that I had befriended in that early time? And he was very polite. He was not off-putting. He said, look, I think he was in his early 80s. He was representing all the greatest artists. Talk about Miro, he was representing Miro or Calder, Henri Matisse's father and others. So he had a full plate. So he said, I can't represent them, but they're talented. There must be some other people who could help you. Go out there or you do it yourself. And so I went to another dealer at the time who was a specialist on German art, a family friend who had a very successful gallery downtown, Danny Newberg. And I asked Danny, would you be interested in taking on these Chinese artists? And he said no. And really it was out of frustration that I was striking out. And at the time I was a designer. I had a very modest salary, but with my salary, I was walking in Soho up with two of my Chinese artist friends, and I saw a for rent sign on Green Street, and I knocked on the door. It was an old metal shop, and I said, do you have a space for rent? And the guy named Joe said, yeah, come upstairs, Joe Lavelli, I'm renting it out. And I think it was $1,000. And I said, oh, I can afford that. And so I decided, despite whatever everyone said, I'm going to do it for them. I'm going to create a gallery for Chinese contemporary art in New York so that we could have a template, a place where we could meet and showcase my talented friends. So I was really dragged in. I didn't realize I was going to become a gallerist. I love collecting. And I guess, I don't know, I was wooed by this sort of idea of the unknown. And I think art dealing is like any job, you got to be completely dedicated to it. And I think there was a time where I was questioning, can an art dealer buy art of his artists? Can I collect some of the good artwork? And I was even one time confronted with a collector saying, "Oh, you're the gallerist, you're keeping all the goodies for yourself." And then I remember when I was in China visiting the ambassador from Switzerland, Uli Sig, and he had these incredibly important collectors visiting him, one of the biggest collectors of Switzerland, and they were telling me, you don't have a 401k. You, as the artist or art dealer, you need to buy into your artist. You need to put things away. The artists need to put things away. It's their well-being and your well-being that you need to invest and be smart. And it's so interesting. So I was able to overcome this idea that the art dealer, because I always thought the art dealer shouldn't keep everything behind, in secret. I don't, but I do. When I buy an art piece, if I buy the artwork from an artist like Yigal, and I pay good money just like my clients, I have every right to own that piece. And so anyway, that's how I became an art dealer.